Hello, everybody. Welcome to lesson 2. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about coronary artery disease. You have two terms you should be familiar with. The first is atherosclerosis, which is narrowing of the arteries due to plaque buildup. And then you have arterial sclerosis. Here, this is the hardening of the arteries, and the idea behind that is it causes hypertension, and we'll deal more with that in lesson number 6. In this lesson, we'll be dealing a lot of atherosclerosis and how it develops. Here's a few terms you should be familiar with. You have coronary artery disease. This involves atherosclerosis in the coronary arteries. It's a leading cause of death in the U.S. Again, we have atherosclerosis, again, the progressive narrowing of the arteries due to plaque formation. And this is really what this lesson is going to be talking about, is how that develops, how eating that Big Mac actually is going to end up causing atherosclerosis. And arteriosclerosis is the hardening of the arteries. Again, when they harden, they're unable to dilate, which means expand. As a result, blood pressure will increase, causing hypertension. You also have ischemia, which is a deficiency of blood flow to the heart caused by coronary artery disease. So when you have atherosclerosis and it prevents the blood flow to the heart, it stresses the heart, and that can cause problems such as a heart attack. And this is one of the leading causes of coronary artery disease. Speaking of heart attack, technical term is called myocardial infarction, and it's a heart attack due to ischemia leading to irreversible damage and necrosis. So the idea here is that when the blood flow isn't getting, adequate blood flow isn't getting back to the heart is stressed, damage to the heart occurs, and then necrosis is the term where you have actually tissue death. And once necrosis sets in, the tissue is dead. And so you want to try to avoid getting to that point. And here's some statistics, and the reason why we're actually focusing on this is the fact that you see that coronary artery disease makes up over 50% of all the cardiovascular disease deaths. You have some leading for hypertension, heart failure, and stroke, but a large part of this is this coronary artery disease, and a large has to do with lack of exercise and healthy diet. So a lot of your patients are going to be coming through your door that you're going to be working with are going to be suffering from coronary artery disease. So it's important to understand how this is developed. Again, the coronary artery disease, this is the amount of deaths per year. You can see it's quite a lot compared to cancer, accidents, and the other conditions. It's quite over about 1 million individuals die per year with coronary artery disease. So again, this will be something that you'll be working with a lot of clients dealing with coronary artery disease. These are statistics. You don't need to memorize these. This just kind of emphasize why we're focused on this. Again, you can see the number of deaths per year due to heart attacks and angioplasty, which are things to help alleviate blocked arteries. You have coronary artery bypass surgeries. Anyway, you can see that there's quite a lot of procedures and deaths due to cardiovascular disease. So again, you're going to be dealing with a lot of patients and clients that are going to be suffering from cardiovascular disease. So it's important for you to understand how this develops. And this is just risk factors. What are things that contribute to coronary artery disease? Anything above 1 in this odds ratio contributes to it. So you can see that you have high blood sugar, triglycerides, and circumference, waist circumference contributes somewhat. But also you have diabetes, low HDL cholesterol, which is considered the good cholesterol. We'll talk more about HDL and, later on in this lesson, and also in lesson number 3. And you have hypertension, which is high blood pressure, which we'll talk more about that in lesson number 6. But you can see all of these are modifiable risk factors, meaning that they can be modified with healthy diet. But again, all these contribute to cardiovascular disease. And here's the overview of atherosclerosis. So here is what it looks like in a normal artery. You can see that how the lumen of the artery is open. And then again, just to review our layers working from the lumen outward, we have the coronary artery intima, and then we have the tunica media, and also finally the tunica externa. Here is an example of what happens over time when you have plaque buildup. You can see that here's the plaque that builds up and the blood clot that ensues, called a thrombosis. One thing to keep in mind, though, this is not the most accurate picture in the sense that you notice that the plaque looks like it's built up right on top of the tunica intima. However, as we talked about in lesson number 1, it actually is just underneath that endothelial layer. And so we'll show that here in this video. So in a moment, we're going to talk about this video. This is going to be a good overview of the video of the atherosclerosis. You may not understand all the terms and things that they talk about, the progression, but over the course of lesson number 2, we're actually going to go through most of the things that they talk about here in this video. So hopefully by the end of this lesson, this video, if you're to watch it again, would be very familiar with you. So let's take a moment here and we'll go over and watch the video.
Atherosclerosis is the buildup of fatty deposits, including cholesterol, in the walls of arteries. It's a major cause of cardiovascular disease, including stroke and heart attack, and contributes to the death of around 70 million people worldwide every year. This short presentation illustrates the key stages in its development and its main impact on cardiovascular health. Cholesterol is a natural, fat-like substance and is essential to health. However, too much cholesterol in your blood can be harmful. Cholesterol is produced in the liver.
These white blood cells here are going to be called monocytes. We're going to talk a lot about these, but white blood cells are going to be recruited from the immune system to go to the coronary artery intima when you have plaque buildup. And the idea is that these white blood cells, monocytes, are supposed to help alleviate the plaque that's starting to build up. However, as we'll see, when you have too many white blood cells or monocytes, that's when this atherosclerotic process can proceed into the buildup of plaque and then eventually narrowing of the arteries due to the plaque buildup.
But can also be found in certain foods, such as those high in saturated fats. There are many types of cholesterol. The main type involved in atherosclerosis is called LDL-C, or bad cholesterol. Another type of cholesterol, HDL-C, is called good cholesterol. It's important to increase HDL-C as well as reduce LDL-C when treating high cholesterol. A normal artery wall consists of 3 main layers: a thin, smooth layer that lines the inside of the artery to help blood flow, a muscular, elastic layer that helps the artery pulse to push blood around the body, and a tough outer layer to protect the artery. The exact cause of atherosclerosis is not known, but several factors, including smoking, high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol, are known to damage the smooth lining of the artery and contribute to atherosclerosis. Once this layer is damaged, the bad cholesterol...
This here, if you notice these coming in, that's actually the LDL that's coming in, the LDL cholesterol, and it's actually going down. We're in right here. We're in the lumen of the coronary artery, and what's happening is you're going to see that the LDL is actually penetrating through the wall, that endothelial layer of the tunica intima, and now it's going down into into that space of the tunica intima.
Or LDL-C can get into the wall of the artery. There are 4 key stages in the development of atherosclerosis. The body tries to defend against the invasion of LDL-C into the artery walls by activating specialized cells called macrophages to consume the LDL-C. They become enlarged.
So this is going to be a macrophage that's actually starting to engulf or take over these LDL particles, and they're being attracted to each other because the macrophage has what's called scavenger receptors. And you'll notice that what's happening here is as his macrophage starts to pick up these LDLs, it's going to start to form into what's called the plaque or fatty streak here.
Cholesterol-enriched cells called foam cells that are embedded in the vessel wall. The accumulation of foam cells can be seen by the presence of fatty streaks in the vessel wall. As the fatty streaks grow, The body tries to protect the artery from them by surrounding them in a fibrous capsule. At this
Notice what's happening here. This is the lumen of the coronary artery. And again, here we have this thin layer of the tunica intima, that the endothelial layer, and right underneath here is where the collection of the plaque is building up. And then right here is that tunica media. The important part is notice that when you have plaque buildup, how the wall of the artery actually pushes down. And the reason for that is that it allows for the lumen to stay as open as possible, as wide as possible, to protect us from an occlusion of the blood flow. So that's why you notice that you have plaque buildup, initially the wall goes downward and outward, and that's the idea, is to keep the lumen open as much as possible. But over time, as you'll notice, it can only stretch so far downward before finally, as the plaque builds up, it's going to have to start to go inward into the lumen, thus occluding it.
Stage, the growth is called a plaque. As the plaque gets bigger, the body tries to preserve the blood flow through the artery. The plaque expands into the elastic layer, which stretches in order to keep the opening of the artery the same. If the plaque continues to grow, its expansion will eventually intrude on the inner opening of the vessel, as the elastic layer cannot stretch anymore. This reduces the ability of blood to get through the artery. At this stage, physical symptoms such as angina may appear. Also, over time, calcium may be deposited in the plaque, making it hard and inflexible. This reduces the ability of the artery to expand to increase blood flow when needed, for example, during exercise. As the plaque grows into the artery opening, it squeezes the blood through an ever smaller gap. The resulting increase in pressure at the narrowing can damage the capsule covering the plaque, which may then rupture, resulting in a blood clot that can completely block the...
So this is the rupture of the plaque, and what's happening is that plaque is now protruding into the lumen, and then eventually will form a thrombus or a big blood clot as red blood cells stick to it. And we'll talk more about how that occurs. But this event here, where you have the protrusion of the plaque through the tunica intima, is leading cause of all the sudden heart attacks.
Artery. Depending on the location of the blockage, the consequences, such as stroke or heart attack, may be severe and could be life-threatening. Atherosclerosis is progressive, and it can take many years before symptoms appear. But some people can have no symptoms even with extensive atherosclerosis and are at risk from sudden death. The symptoms depend on the site of the affected artery. In the heart, it can manifest as chest pains, angina. In the brain, as a type of mini-stroke called transient ischemic attacks. And to the legs, as a cramp-like condition called intermittent claudication, which can result in amputation of the limb.
So the point of this is claudication is that not only can plaque build up in your coronary arteries, but also our arteries throughout the body. And this claudication basically means that in the legs, you have blockage of blood flow throughout somewhere along the arteries of the legs, and that can cause or affect blood flow down to the extremities, which can be very painful.
If a plaque ruptures, the resulting blood clot may block the artery and cause a heart attack or a stroke, which can often be fatal. Atherosclerosis may cause the artery wall to weaken, causing it to bulge under the pressure from the blood. This bulge, called an aneurysm, can rupture, and the resulting bleed, called a hemorrhage, can be fatal. We hope, after this presentation, that you understand how the bad cholesterol LDL-C contributes to cardiovascular disease and atherosclerosis, and what that means for your health. We also hope you appreciate why always taking your medication, as prescribed by your doctor, is so important in maintaining low LDL-C and high HDL-C in order to reduce your cardiovascular risk.
So that was a video with an overview of atherosclerosis. And again, some of those terms you may not be familiar with. Don't worry, we're going to start going step by step through how the development of atherosclerosis. And then this is just the pathobiology of where we're headed, how it accumulates. So again, this is the age. So when you're young, you have pretty clean, no plaque buildup. But as you get into your 20s, or most of you are now, you can notice that you start to have a little bit of buildup, and then by the time you get into your 30s, and especially by 40s, you can actually develop the thrombosis, and you can have a heart attack, and that can lead to death or severe limitations. So we're going to talk about how does this fatty streak develop, the plaque develop, and then finally a thrombosis. So this concludes this part of the video, and the next lesson we're going to talk about is actually the first step of our pathway of the buildup of the plaque.